Please call the roll.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Division 7, Gary Van Dam.
Here.
Division 6, Audrey Miller.
Here.
Division 5, Robert Harris.
Here.
Division 4, Justin Lane.
Here.
Division 3, Frank Donato.
Here.
Division 2, Keith Dias.
Here.
Division 1, Shelley Sourcewell.
Thank you. Item 4, adoption of agenda. Do I have a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
Move to approve the agenda. Second.
Can I make a change on that agenda? On page 3, item 16, it should say adjourn to a special meeting on March 31st.
As opposed to a regular meeting on March 10th, which is today.
I'm sorry?
We need to change the wording on item number 16 to special meeting on March 31st.
Okay. All right, thank you. We have a motion and a second to approve the agenda. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That's approved. Item 5, public comments. If anybody in the audience would like to address the board on any item that is not on the agenda, please feel free to do so now. Item 7, consent calendar. Do I have a motion to approve the consent calendar?
I'll move to approve the consent calendar.
Second.
Any discussion or questions? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That's approved. Item 8A, Finance Committee. Director Donato, do you have a report?
Yes, Finance Committee met yesterday, went over all the bills and the check registers. And we have an item here that deals with a couple of conference or basically organizations that we feel that the committee felt that we should participate in. And regarding groundwater events, and since we're in that business right now, give us some ideas. So does anything you want to say?
Yeah, it's just what this item would do is provide the authority for staff or directors to attend Groundwater Resource Association of California events, also the seminar group, and a certain amount of events and conferences or seminars that they have that would be pertinent to our business activities. This just adds those to the list of available conferences for the board members and staff to attend.
Okay, I'll move on Board Order 881 that we approve the Groundwater Resource Association and also TSG. No, it's not TSG, it's
Yeah, the seminar group.
Seminar group.
huh?
Yeah, it's the seminar group.
It is, okay.
Thanks.
I'll second the motion.
Any more discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That's approved.
That concludes my report.
Thank you very much. Item 8B, New Projects Funding Source Grants Committee. Director Paris, do you have a report?
Yes, we had our meeting, conference on March 3rd, 2020, and we discussed items 8B1 and 8B2, and I believe Dwayne has a presentation on both of the items.
Yes, we do. I'm going to invite Eric O'Donnell from TOWNSEND'S Associates to come up. He has a presentation to talk about the advancement with regards to the SIM Phase 2 funding and the federal process that we've gone through, and also provide a little background on the various services and progress that Townsend is making on behalf of the agency. After they are through with their update to the board, I will have an additional item 8B 2, which would have to do with an amendment to the contract for another year. I'll provide the final signs for that.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, board. My name is Avek with Townsend Public Affairs. Also want to introduce Christopher Townsend, the founder and president of Townsend Public Affairs. We're honored to be here tonight. Thank you for the opportunity to present to you. Quick agenda. We're going to go into some context and background, just why we're here, what we've been working on, and then go into 3 specific categories that we've been focusing our time on. The first one being the WIN Act, Section 4007, and then go into hazard mitigation funding and finish up with some state bond funding on the horizon. Context and background: in July of last year, Board President Sorsabal and the General Manager and Townsend Public Affairs went to Washington, D.C. to conduct a series of advocacy meetings, mostly revolving around the SNP Phase 2 project and how to get some of the money from D.C. into that project back here. Those 2 days of meetings were very successful and yielded a lot of opportunity for us to move forward with specific funding opportunities. And they included 8 members of Congress, as well as the U.S. Department of Interior, the Bureau of Rec, and the White House National Economic Council. Follow-up from those meetings in D.C. indicated that the WIN Act Section 4007 storage funding that we'll go into later was the best immediate opportunity for this to advance in Phase 2, and it was the one on the horizon that made the most sense at the time. We immediately came back and began working with the Bureau's regional staff down here in Southern California on how that funding is allocated and how that process works. We had some previous relationships with the Bureau staff regionally, and that helps advance that efforts as well. And then we continue even today to follow up with those meetings we had in DC with agency staff and with the members of Congress to make sure that they're updated on what we're doing, so that they are our allies and our confidants as we go forward in the process. We're going to need some support beyond your local representatives here. We're also working at the same time, following up from other funding opportunities that came up, including MILCON funding, which mostly focuses on projects that are specific to military installations. There's some correlation between SIP Phase 2 and Edwards, as you probably know. So that's an avenue of funding we are still looking into and still following up on, as well as WRDA, the Water Resources Development Act. That's mainly for the Army Corps' work plan that's in there. Projects that are in the Army Corps' work plan generally end up getting funded, and that's still on the table to be reauthorized in September, so also something we've been following up on. But the focus we want to talk about tonight is the WIN Act Section 4007 storage funding. That's what we've been working on, and that really is a program that came out of with the WIN Act from 2016, the Water Infrastructure Investment for the Nation. And that was enacted in 2016, and it has a whole variety of programs in there for water projects in the western United States. But I will say that the Section 4007 is a portion of that money, a specific section in that bill that allocates $335 million for water storage related projects in the West. And our nexus to that is, as you know, the SNP Phase 2 takes that water from the bank and distributes it. There's a nexus there with water storage that we think is an important one to emphasize. That money was authorized from fiscal year 17 to 19 for the full amount, meaning that money is ready to be spent by the federal government and needs to be spent by 2022, otherwise the authorization expires. So our focus has been on that because of the short time frame remaining to get that money, and for the fact that more than half of that $335 million is still yet to be distributed by the Bureau of Government. What you see in front of you is a checklist from the Bureau of what is required in order to receive some of this funding. You'll see here that the check marks on the right represent what items have been completed. Happy to announce that we, TBA and staff attended a California Water Commission meeting where we had to present to the Commission about SNP Phase 2, and they had to determine that it was consistent with Proposition 1. Kind of a weird step there, but that's something that Senator Feinstein included in the bill in 2016, just for California water projects. They have to go through the Water Commission to make sure that it is consistent with California water priorities. Happy to announce that the Water Commission did agree that SNP Phase 2 was consistent with the California water priorities, and they approved that. From there, we leverage our relationships further, and we're able to secure a letter from the governor. The governor has to request federal participation from the Secretary of the Interior to participate in the SNP Phase 2 program. So happy to announce that we do have that governor's letter sealed as well. And then you can see that the environmental compliance has also been completed. and then we are on time to construct before 2021, assuming funding is applied. So I also wanted to mention that in February, we received a letter of support from Congressman McCarthy's office with the project. That's going to be helpful when the project is under review by the Bureau. That's the governor's letter that we received supporting the project. A little small font, I apologize for it, but it's to Secretary Bernhardt requesting his federal support of the SNP Phase 2 project. And then that is the Minority Leader McCarthy's letter of support for SNP Phase 2 funding for the Section 4007 program, and that was included in our feasibility study that I'll talk about next. So current status of where we are right now with that funding. In January, we worked with Avek staff to submit a feasibility study to the Bureau of Rec. That's the first step in the process for staff for them to really dig into the project and understand what it does and agree with some of the technical and environmental components of the project. So that was submitted in January and is expected to take several months for them to review in its entirety. We also submitted updated environmental documents in February, as well as the letters from the governor and from Minority Leader McCarthy. So now that feasibility study is under review by the policy team back in DC for the Bureau to ensure that it's consistent with the WIN Act and the Bureau standards. And then once it's complete, we expect a site visit and in-person meeting with the Bureau here at the agency sometime in early summer 2020 to go over all the financials of the project, go over more of the technical descriptions, and to probably walk the project site as well to understand better what the project will do. Next steps on this WIN Act Section 4007 funding is to continue to interface with the Bureau during the review of the feasibility study. We do expect the policy team to have questions and come back and ask those questions. That's typically how these feasibility study reviews work. None of them are perfect, and there's going to be questions they're going to have, and they're going to have some probably minor changes to the feasibility study to get it the way they want. So we're going to want to make sure that we address their feedback in a timely manner. We've been the mouthpiece for the agency to the Bureau, and we continue to facilitate those conversations going forward. We're also going to want to continue our relationships in Washington, D.C. and leverage those allies that we have so they're ready to advocate on our behalf once this gets to the next level, which it would need to be authorized in appropriations legislation at the federal level and be signed by the President eventually. And then we're also going to want to work toward receiving support from the Secretary of the Interior to include it in his request to Congress. Like I said, it has to be part of an appropriations bill once it does get passed. So we're hoping at the end of this year, assuming federal budget timelines are somewhat intact, we'll have a better sense of if that's included in Congress's budget. Moving on briefly to hazard mitigation funding. In April of last year, almost a year ago now, we submitted an application on behalf of the agency for funding for a local hazard mitigation plan. And that funding is through CalOES, the Governor's Office of Emergency Services, but technically it's a pass-through for FEMA money at the federal level. So what's important about a local hazard mitigation plan is that it would unlock additional funding opportunities for the agency. And what I mean by that is every time there's a disaster in California, a natural disaster in California, and you can imagine nowadays it's all the time, right, with wildfires and floods and all of that. FEMA unlocks money for California to access, to recover from those disasters, but also most importantly to prepare for the next ones. And in order to have access to that money, you have to have a local hazard mitigation plan adopted for your jurisdiction, or you're not eligible for any of that funding. So what this grant would do is allow us to develop that local hazard mitigation plan so that in the future rounds of funding from FEMA, we can apply for greater sums of money for projects such as generators or earthquake proofing certain pump stations or any of those sort of hardening projects that would make you more resilient to future disasters in the area. So currently that application was submitted to CalOES, like I said, and they're the state applicants. So individual applicants can't apply to FEMA. The state has to apply on your behalf to FEMA, and we were included in the state's application to FEMA, which is the competitive process there, is to get the state to include you in their application. So the state has submitted theirs to FEMA. We're still waiting on FEMA to make their determinations. All signs point to good news from here, but we need to continue to be vigilant and wait for that to come in from FEMA. Finally, state bond funding. There it is. I'm sure you've probably heard, but the California legislature has been floating the idea of a climate change natural resources bond. for the November ballot. This started last year in an attempt toward the end of the year. Didn't make it last year, and it's carried over to this year. But some context there is we and agency staff and the board president traveled to Sacramento in August of last year to kind of do the same sort of advocacy experience that we did in DC, but at the state level instead. So we met with several relevant members, including your own members, Senator Lackey and Senator Wilk, as well as staff of other members that are involved in the bond process and state departments that have funding, again, all related to SNP Phase 2 and their related projects. So currently, where we stand with state bond funding is the Assembly, the Senate, and the Governor's Office all have 3 different versions of a climate change natural resources bond, which is typical, but now we have to figure out how those are going to be negotiated and mix and match the different pools to be a consistent one bond going forward, because there's only going to be one bond that gets voted on and passes to make it to the November ballot. This pie chart is just the governor's bond. The Assembly language is not currently out yet, and the Senate language is going to be similar to that. So I wanted to show you the governor's bond, what he has requested in a climate change bond, because the governor's bond versus when compared to the Assembly and the Senate bond has more water funding in it, has a greater share. You can see there the 2.9 billion, I should say billion would be, or sorry, that's in thousands. So yeah, that's a $2.9 billion of drinking water, flooded, drought money in his bond. So there's a lot of categories within that, and we think that the SNP Phase 2 project would fit pretty well in some of those categories. So the challenge is to make sure that we're staying on top of the negotiations between the Governor's Office, the Assembly, and the Senate to make sure that those funding pots are available for you to access for your SNP Phase 2. So where we are today is we've already worked with staff to follow up with our Sacramento meetings and our contacts to submit specific language that we want included in the bond that we think would make SNP Phase 2 more competitive, and to prioritize projects like SNP. And that would be a very narrow language that very narrowly defines priorities for the programs, and it would coincidentally align with the priorities of SNP, and it would be a good fit if we get that language included in the bond. We're involved in conversations, like I said, with the bond's authors' offices, Assemblymember Eddie Garcia on the Assembly side, and Senator Stern on the Senator Allen on the Senate side, both LA, or one LA, one Inland Empire-based member. And then I will mention that Assemblymember Laura Friedman from the LA area is taking the lead on the water side of these negotiations as well, so we're leveraging our relationships with her and with her neighbors to make sure that your priorities are on the top of her list as well. Next step for this is to continue to advocate, like I said, for the language to be included in whatever negotiation does come out, and to make sure that you and your projects are eligible and competitive for whatever funding does come from that proposed bond in November. And then, of course, the bond has to pass. And I'm sure you saw that Prop 13 school bond did not pass. But I do think it would be a different story that for this bond, mostly because the price is a lot less. It'll be about a $4.7 billion bond is what the governor is what he's tapped out on. And resources bonds tend to do a little bit better as well. With that, happy to answer the questions.
So if we don't get this done by 2022, we lose that money, you said?
So that's only, not the project construction, that's only if you don't get the application process submitted by 2022. So your project could be constructed further into the future, but you need to have that funding secured by 2021, 2022.
You see that happening?
I do.
Why wouldn't we give the money?
Why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
I think I would put it in the policy team's hands at the Bureau. They are the ones that are linking up the WIN Act legislation with what we submitted in the feasibility study, and to make sure that it's a good fit. Staff's looked at it, we've had other consultants look at it, and even what we've heard from Bureau staff, it seems to be a fit, and they just need to pour into the more technical analysis of it to make sure that it is consistent with the WIN Act.
What puzzled me is, at the presentation you've given us, you don't see much about Edwards Air Force Base in this proposal. It's probably the most valuable asset, probably right now coming forward in the United States. The largest military contract in the history, probably of the world. Building the bomber in Palmdale there, and the buildings that have been built out there. to do the testing for this project. This pipeline is to secure water if there's ever a catastrophe, to give it additional water. From congressional to the governor have all supported it. Why, as a question I have is, why wouldn't we get the money to build that pipeline? As I'm just.
So you brought, and I got to mention this because as you can imagine, a lot of different aspects to this that gets complicated. But the federal money, in order for the feds to give you money, they have to get an equal benefit in return for that money. So you have to justify your project and quantify how much federal benefit they're going to get from this. And you can be assured that Edwards was all over that quantification in terms of, what we were claiming to the federal government as, hey, we're asking for approximately 26 million for this phase 2, and here's where we think you're going to get your 26 million back in benefit from our project. And a lot of that was Edwards Air Force Base and reliability and taking pressure off the Delta for them in terms of drought and times.
It's a $100 billion project. You know what $25 million is to a $100 billion project? We're talking, ours, maybe $2.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I know Kevin's involved with that, but we need to spend, put aggressiveness to his organization. And I know he's been helpful lately, but we need to get him on, he's on board, but we need to get some additional congressional people that are on that committee to also maybe submit letters to the feds to say this is a valid situation to protect if there's ever a catastrophe where we can move water faster throughout the whole system. This pipeline is just building a pipeline. This pipeline will serve that we can run water from any location within the agency. If it plants down here, we can run that water from some other location. So,
do we have bipartisan support in Congress?
You have your minority leader, McCarthy's support, and you had the full support of Katie Hill prior to her resignation from Congress. So I would, and then from the allies that we've met on our trip to DC, some Dem, some Republican, they are also supportive. So I would say yes.
Okay.
It's not a political project. That's
what I'm saying. I'd like to see. I know that every letter I've seen has basically just been from Kevin, and they're all Republicans. So I'd like to see some Democrat congressional leaders.
Absolutely. And we met with Congressman Lowenthal, Congressman Garamendi back in DC, as well as Chair Napolitano's staff as well. So those are powerful Democrats in the right committees to support your project as well.
Any more questions for Eric?
So if there's no other questions, that's the update of the materials under AB1, and the AB2 item, which is up for board vote, would be to extend the contract of Townsend and Associates to for another year. Their contract is currently up and ended the 28th of February, so it would be March 1st through February of 28th of 2021 to continue the work that we're doing. The cost of their contract is $6,500 a month.
How much?
$6,500 a month, $78,000 a year. And we've had Townsend Public Affairs with us for 2 years now. So we've had this program for 2 years. This would be the third year coming up.
Okay, I move we approve board order A2 for $6,500 a month for another year.
Second motion.
Is there any reason why we wouldn't do a 2-year contract or a year contract?
We just feel more comfortable year to year. Keeps the pressure on them to continue to perform. So.
And I agree with Justin here that we need some bipartisan congressional people to somehow jump into this thing. I think that's very important, So do your best to try to get that together.
Any more questions or discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Item number 10, General Manager's Report.
Yes, this is General Manager's report for March 10th, 2020. Excuse me. The Northern California forecast. It's mostly sunny, clear with some warmer temps through the week. There might be some rain and snow later over the weekend, and our snow levels are moving between 5,000 and 8,000, back to 4,500 acre feet. So we might be able to have a little bit of water. Here's our infamous precipitation graph, and as you can see, here's the month of February. They got 0.2 tenths, I think, the last day. And even though we've had a little bit of water here, it's about a half an inch in March, but we're still, this is already, what, the 10th? So we're a third of the way through, so it doesn't look too good for March either, unless we get some real rainstorms coming in. So that's where we're at right now. And this was reflected in this graph here, and I've shown you this before. Here's average, and these are really wet years, and then this is the driest year on record, and a couple other dry years that we had. You can see that when we hit late January, early February, this horizontal line means no precipitation, and you can see there's a little blip that happened in March here, but we still need to get a half an inch of rain just to avoid being the driest year on record, which was 1977. Thank goodness we had a wet year last year, so our reservoirs are still in pretty good shape relative to our precipitation level, where we have ourselves. Lake Orville, with the vast majority of our water stored, is currently at 64% of total capacity, and right now we would normally be about 89%. So it's not too terribly bad. And also here's the San Luis. Gosh, here's the San Luis conditions with capacity at 68% and 79% being our historical average. And you can see throughout the state, the rest of the reservoirs about average, and that's the benefit of having a good wet year last year where the whole reservoirs could be full. We'll have to if we don't get any rain this year, undoubtedly these reservoirs will go down, and we'll be looking at next year to try and fill those reservoirs back up. And that's where we get into a second or third year drought and the compounding effect that has. Wanted to also provide you a little bit of information here, and this has to do with the Sisk Dam, which is the dam that is for the San Luis Reservoir. This is the San Luis Reservoir here. Here's the area that's vulnerable to seismic influences, and this is the after bay where the water comes out and goes into the California Canal. And these are the areas where liquefaction might be an issue. So DWR, working with Bureau of Reclamation, has been trying to determine a way or a method in which to repair these potential dam safety issues. And so there's two primary areas of failure that may happen. In other words, this is where the dam actually shakes and lowers itself to where the water goes over the top of the dam and down the crest and creates flooding downstream, or a different method where it actually shakes, provides these crevices where water could develop and then do the same thing, go downstream. So this is what the engineers are trying to repair. Some of the modifications that they're looking for is putting a shear key in that would replace those liquefied soils, those soils that potentially could liquefy in a earthquake. Stability berm, this mitigates the sliding of the embankment. And then a two-stage filter system that will eliminate some of the cracking, and then a tone drain system to manage water drainage through the embankment. So what that looks like is in certain sections, you'll add an extra 12 feet of crest height, and you'll put in this keyway down here that would remove all those liquefied soils, and then you place all this overburden here in front to keep that dam essentially as a kind of a buffer to keep the dam from moving side to side. So if you got all this material, believe me, it's a lot of material that we're talking about coming in here that would help do that. Here's a different section and a different repair. Once again, they're adding additional material to the top of the dam. Here's the existing dam surface now. And you can see this is a tow drain system in here, and then a massive amount of stability berm that would be placed up against the dam so to prevent it from shaking horizontally. And so what this, once these two projects are done, this would reduce the risk to an acceptable level to ensure public safety for the federal guidelines. And also the modifications would ensure a high level of reliability and safety of this critical structure, and reduces the probability of dam failure and estimated loss of life and other consequences that may occur. Here's some of the milestones that have occurred. In December of 2019, the record of decision was signed, and the notice of termination, that's both the federal and the state processes. And in March of this year, we got the report from the department. It's been forwarded on to the Office of Management and Budget. And as you can see, over the course of the next year and into next year, they're looking for construction to begin approximately June of 2021. And I would suspect that may or may not happen depending on how well things go through the process. Give you an idea, this is just one of the first contracts that they've looked at. And you can see here there's a separation between the Bureau of Reclamation charges and the DWR charges. And about almost 26 million, that's just for the engineering. That has nothing to do with construction or any of those other costs of getting borrowed material and putting that all into the process. So it's going to be a very, very expensive project moving forward. And so,
Can you go back?
Sure.
Okay, so I see two columns here.
Mm-hmm.
Are they asking us to participate in this thing too?
Yes, we are participating. They aren't asking. This is one of our obligations as a state contractor to protect the dam. The only good news I can give you with regards to that is that the DWR participation is about 20% of the total amount. We're a little less than 5 million, whereas the Bureau's paying the lion's share of them.
Well, we are them. So I mean, we're getting.
Bureau of Reclamation is a federal project.
Yeah, you sure not taking money from us too?
Yeah, they are. 5 million worth for this part.
No, but what? So we just paid. So they hit the twin single tunnel that they haven't even started yet, and we're paying $3.5 million. That the taxpayers will be paying for that too. So where's this end? Are we going to be doubling, tripling the water?
It's why I'm trying to provide you this information. I don't know where it's going to end. I can tell you.
Where the money's going to come.
Well, that's going to be our task to find out where we're going to get the money and how it's going to be developed. We're going to have a large expenditure for this repair, and we're going to pay our proportionate share.
This number's got a big awakening because he saw this the tip of the iceberg that people vote no on tax increases.
Right.
So, and then he's talking about the bullet train again, bringing that thing up again. I mean, this is absolutely ludicrous. All this stuff.
Well, this is a federal requirement, so dam safety is very, very important at the present time. So this is a project that will begin to move forward, and I wanted to make you aware of it, just so that you can keep it in the back of your mind as the costs come in over the years.
You're going to keep it in front of my mind, right?
I'm going to keep it in front of your mind, yes. I'm going to keep it right out in front, so you can't say that I didn't let you know. It's coming. Okay. So, I wanted to provide you, in your packet is a activities report for February. We've kind of broken this down into, based on our strategic plan objectives. This is just, it's just some, a recap of what was accomplished in February. And under the groundwater basin stewardship column, we had a design proposal and professional service agreement, which was approved by the board for MC Engineering, and that is for some underground piping on the west side water bank. As you know, we recently just signed the Santec Designs Consultant contract on the High Desert Water Bank that was approved on the 3.5. As far as water reliability, we talked about the SNP Phase 2 and completing all of the items that are necessary for our submittal to the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation. Our east side water treatment plant clarifier valve was replaced, and that project was completed. Also, we issued a contract to Bowie contractors to rehabilitate various customer turnouts. That was approved by the board. And we had maintenance work done on the north feeder that's been completed. Also, the cow feeder repairs were underway and are now complete. That project is done. The State Water Project Committee was provided an update on the status of the voluntary agreements and our State Water Project permit. And we had a presentation on the delivery capacity report that was delivered by Tom Barnes on February 11th of last month. In addition, we met our remained below our internal goal, 64 parts per billion for trihalomethanes. We had an ELAP approved recertification of our laboratory following an audit that was completed in January. And then we also, Jordan Ray, our laboratory director, also provided us a update on the PFAS and those types of requirements, and all of our first order THM samples were collected. As you know, the draft purchasing policy was finalized, and the board of directors approved that also on the 5th of March. And the finance department and executive management conducted a formal review of the agency's banking relationships with Wells Fargo on the 25th, and there'll be more to come in March at the finance committee meeting. As far as human resource stewardship, we had recruitment continues for the maintenance department. We had an RFP which was distributed for a salary survey to make sure we're current with the market. Those responses were due on 3/4 of 20. The agency made a $25,000 investment in scholarship endowment for the Antelope Valley College to support future treatment distribution workers. A support letter for the SNP project was received by Congressman McCarthy, was mentioned earlier. We also had 28 representatives from LA County Waterworks to our Quartz Hill Water Treatment Plant on the 28th, or on the 18th of February. Our communication plan was finalized by the board of directors on 2/25, and the professional service agreement with Lisa Semchek was approved also, and the board approved a $5,000 scholarship for kids Ag Day. And wanted to provide you a little bit of information with regards to water banking. And you can see this is our west side water bank here. And what this shows is we put in almost 152,000 acre feet. We have removed 52,000 acre feet. We have 15,199 leave behind, so that leaves us 84,000 acre feet available for us to pump at any time out of that bank. You can see this is in proportion, so you can see the east side, Upper Amagosa, and Big Rock Creek are much smaller, but don't be alarmed, we have a blow up of those to see it a little bit better. Here's the east side water bank. We put about 3,606 acre feet. We have removed 170 acre feet, so we got a deficit of 625 acre feet. So we'll have to add some more water into that east side water bank to correct that over the course of the next several months. And if you look at the upper Amagosa project, we put a total of 314 acre feet in there. We need to leave 31 acre feet behind for the 10%, and that gives us an extra 283 acre feet. And once again, the Big Rock Creek, we did the same thing, 245, 25 left behind, and 221 remaining. Give you an idea of what we have in storage. As you can see here, some of the election results, just to give you an idea who's in the runoffs for these various items. We'll go into great detail there. We'll let you know that April 2nd is the spring recess begins and the legislature reconvenes on the 13th. And then April 24th is the last day for policy committee to hear reports to fiscal bills to fiscal committees. A couple of bills I wanted to let you know about that both Townsend Public Affairs and the agency staff are looking at is our public records, writing and transmitting electronic mail. This bill would require public agency to preserve at least 2 years of every public record that is transmitted by electronic mail. So we'll see how that goes. AB 2560 is a water quality notification response level. This aims to increase the transparency of the state board when they are making changes to notification response levels. We're trying to be more, this bill which would make the Department of Drinking Water more responsive to the regulating folks with regards to making sure that they're aware of what's coming up for them. Senate Bill 931 is local government meetings. This law would require a legislative body to email a copy of agenda and packet if requested. Currently, the law agents only requires them to do a mail. And that would impose a state mandate, which springs some other things. This is going to be heard on March 18th. AB 2560 is also a notification response level procedure bill that is being proposed. And once again, our drinking water testing, PFAS and PFOA, this would require the State Resources Control, State Water Resources Control Board on or before January 1 of 2022 to certify the methodology for testing drinking water, surface water for PFAS, and we're accredit, qualified laboratories to make those items. So that's all we have. As far as the mentioned schedules, we've got a Water Master Board meeting on the 25th. The AB Home Show will be the 28th. Kids Ag Day on 4/8. And we have a state water contractor presentation by Jennifer Pierre on 4/22. My schedule, I'll be in the office this week, but we'll be heading to Sacramento middle of next week.
Dwayne, could you go back a slide?
Sure.
So, on the PFAS, I know that we've talked about this some, but if they're
a PFAS testing expert, but all I can suspect is that people are using different types of methods in order, because remember, one of the things in doing this test is that you can't bathe for like 3 days, and you can't, wear deodorant, you can't do certain things because those get picked up in the test because it's actually parts per trillion we're measuring for. So I'm sure what this is about is having a standardized method to test for this, but those agencies that have used the standard methods test, you shouldn't say, there's a book called Standard Methods that outlines how you do so many of these things, and And I'm sure that's what's been used in the past to figure this out, and there could be differences in how each particular lab is actually performing those tests, which may give you different results. So consequently, I believe this is what's intended, is to have a standardized method that the state is going to require for you to take and perform these tests. So that's what it's about. In my educated but not completely confident opinion of what's going on.
Yeah, no, it's just, I was, you know,
Yeah,
so they shut down
it
so many
seems
wells
weird,
there
right.
in Santa Clarita.
Yeah.
And, you know, if they don't, you know, it's just like looking
But
at this, it
their
seems like they don't
their
know.
levels were so high that
Yeah, okay.
way over the top, so they had an under choice.
Yeah, I have a question.
Sure.
People have been drinking that stuff for over 50, 60, 70 years. I don't see bodies laying all over the sand.
I'm not trying to convince you it's a good idea.
These guys are running, these biologists, scientists are running out of things to find. And you know what they're doing? They're making up stuff that's gonna cost billions of dollars and nobody's gonna be afford to do anything. You know?
Well, it's
I
certainly
mean, it's a joke.
yeah.
I mean, nobody died when we had 50 parts per billion of arsenic. And, you know, people, you know, relatives, my relatives lived to 95, 97. People live, you know, ages went from 40 years average to 70. So what is all this about? Is this costing billions of dollars? It's a joke, it's sad.
Yeah.
It's really sad. Those wells today cost $1.2 million to re-drill a new well. That's what they cost for a brand new well.
I understand.
Just to abandon them?
Yeah, and you gotta go through treatment, and treatment's gonna be really expensive to pump it, so.
It's crazy.
Yep.
Dwayne, are we running Big Rock Creek right now?
We are not.
No?
No. That's concludes my team report.
Any more questions for Dwayne? Thank you very much, Dwayne. Item 11, director's reports. Does anybody have a report?
No.
No.
All right. Item 12, attorney's report. Toby?
Yes, a short report on new law regarding prevailing wages. So just as a backdrop, Dwayne was mentioning several projects, including the contracts that we've been working on, for example, Stantec and Bow contractors regarding the customer turnouts. And we've been working with staff on prevailing wage issues coinciding with the new law that was just in effect January 1, 2020. And since it is a significant law, we thought it would be good to apprise the board of it. So the new law is Assembly Bill 1768, and it basically expands the type of work and contracts that are subject to prevailing wages. So so Assembly Bill 1768 amended Labor Code 1720 to expand the definition of construction to include work performed during site assessment and feasibility study phases of the public works project. And then the Assembly Bill also expanded what pre-construction work means that is subject to prevailing wages. And that includes work performed during design, site assessment, and feasibility study phase of construction. So it significantly expanded the scope of work that is subject to prevailing wages. Before then, it was viewed that just the actual work during construction was subject to prevailing wages. So it's a significant expansion of the type of services and contracts that are subject to prevailing wages. So we thought we would apprise the board of this change. And several other takeaways. Prevailing wages is always a tricky area of the law, and it's changing, it's expanding. There's references to the Department of Industrial Labor board that staff should also coordinate with. And then there's also disconnect between the public contract code and the labor code as to what is a public work. So the takeaway is we've been working with staff to sift through all of that and making sure that we're in compliance with the public contract code as well as labor code. So that's the report.
Any questions for Tobin? Thank you very much. Item 13, request for future agenda items.
I have one, Keith. I understand Brandon Landry is interested in leasing some farming land that he leased in the past year. And I'd like to put on the next agenda, consideration possible action for Brandon Landry to lease the same farm.
Any other requests? Thank you. Item 14, closed session. Is there a need to go into closed session?
Yes, we have one item, which is item B, associated with real property.
14B?
Yeah, 14B.
All right. Do I have a motion to go into closed session?
Move we go into closed session.
I'll second.
All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. We're going into closed session. Thank you.